what's wrong with me? I'm such a bad mom. Something is wrong with me. It's like falling down a well and then getting a shovel and digging deeper. Sounds fun, no? Guilt or judgment can feel more comfortable to us than sadness or fear. If you struggle with confidence, really leaning into this practice will just naturally increase your confidence. Welcome to another episode of Down the Well. I'm your host, Elle, and if you are new to the show, welcome. This show is all about finding transformation and the beauty in motherhood. I want you to see that the sacrifices that you are making matter and that they are made sacred in this time, especially when you have been thrown down the proverbial well that we talk about, which is when life takes you into a hard place, when you're overwhelmed, lost, or unsure who you are or what you're supposed to do next. It's the part of the journey where everything might feel dark, but it's also where real transformation begins. So let's descend and slay those dragons together, and let's have the audacity in this often dark and cynical world to embrace this mother's hero's journey as heroes in our stories rather than victims. And let's raise the next generation to do the same. That's what we're doing here, okay? Today, I want to talk about something that has been so life-changing for me. I learned this in my life coach training years ago, and ever since then, I've just wanted to tell every mother, every person about it. I talk to my kids about it. We bring on so much unnecessary suffering. I am all about necessary pain, but not making ourselves martyrs. And this is an area in motherhood where I see us adding so much unnecessary suffering. It feels like the biggest hack that I've learned in motherhood in the past decade, maybe. Wow, that is quite the claim, but it really might be. So what is the cause of this unnecessary suffering? It's feeling bad about feeling bad. Motherhood is hard enough. We do not need to add this extra layer. It's this subtle pattern where we experience a hard emotion, maybe frustration, sadness, exhaustion, fear, and instead of simply letting ourselves feel it, we add another layer of guilt or usually some form of judgment for not being more grateful, shame for not being stronger, or just even anxiety about what that emotion might mean. We assume that we're doing it wrong and that maybe everybody else knows something that we don't. It's like this underlying thought that something is wrong with us. It's like falling down a well and then getting a shovel and digging deeper. Sounds fun, no? When I was a younger mom with my first two kids, I was in a constant state of layering negative emotion on negative situations or situations that I perceived as negative. I see all that is really different now. Every time I would lose my patience with my kids or snap at them, I would spiral into thoughts of, so-and-so would never yell at their kids. What's wrong with me? I'm such a bad mom. Something is wrong with me. Even just the feeling of being frustrated with them would bring about judgmental thoughts like, good moms don't get frustrated with their kids. I'm not loving enough. It's because my parents got divorced. Something is wrong with me. Then I would either push it all down like a beach ball under the water and put on like a Stepford wife, everything is fine. And I will apologize and make cookies and like perfect my way out of this until then, of course, something would crack and I would burn out and then feel so much worse because now I was also a failure at life, not just motherhood, or I'd be just a crying mess and I would give up on the day and I would want to disconnect from myself and other people and numb myself in some way with like food, shows, shopping, something. Either way, I was shoveling more dirt from the hole, going deeper and deeper. So let's talk about primary versus secondary emotions. That's what we're talking about in this layering of emotions. When I was trained as a coach at the Life Coach School years ago, one of the most freeing concepts I learned was about this layering of negative emotion. The idea is simple. The first emotion, say sadness or disappointment, that problem, that primary emotion is not the problem. That is just a part of being human. Those emotions are going to come up, right? As a response to the thoughts that we have in our lives. But when we think thoughts like, I shouldn't feel this way, or what's wrong with me, very judgmental thoughts about that primary emotion, we add a second emotion on top of it. And that second emotion or secondary emotion is optional, but it is often the one that hurts the most and adds the most amount of unnecessary suffering. Think about it like this. Your child is melting down and you feel overwhelmed. That's the first emotion, overwhelm. And then your brain whispers, good moms don't feel this way. You should just be more patient. Now you're not just overwhelmed, you're also ashamed of being overwhelmed. And that's the layering. You feel frustrated and then you feel guilty for being frustrated. Really, you feel frustrated and then you judge yourself for being frustrated. And you are resisting that primary emotion in the process, which exacerbates that frustration, right? You feel lonely and then you judge yourself for not being grateful. You feel sad and then you feel anxious because that's not what a healthy person should feel. It's when the primary emotion, which is just a natural human feeling, chemical reaction in the body, versus the secondary emotion, which is just a reaction to that primary emotion. So why do we do this? That natural, honest emotion is that descent down the well. Then we layer on the judgment and shame. And while it's so normal and we're all going to do this, isn't it liberating to know that we can actually stop the unnecessary descent or suffering and really just face the core emotions rather than feeling bad about feeling bad all the time or always feeling like something is wrong with us? Years ago, I taught an emotional skills class to a group of 11 and 12-year-old girls, actually right here in this barn. This barn has served many purposes. One evening, I was teaching them the difference between circumstances and thoughts, and I gave them this scenario from my high school days where I asked this boy to a girl's choice dance, and he kind of rejected me and said no. And I turned to the girls and I said, what do you think my thought was in that moment? Something is. And they all rang out like a chorus in perfect unison. Wrong with me. Something is wrong with me. Of course, that is exactly what I thought as a 16-year-old girl, and we all laughed about it. But I also wanted to cry just a little bit because of how evident it was that this layering of judgment and spiraling of the negative emotion comes in so naturally and so early for most of us. It wasn't just the rejection. It wasn't just the disappointment of that moment. It was then the layering of something must be wrong with me, right? It was the judgment of the emotion. So what do? Allowing for that first emotion to exist without judgment is where healing begins. And not just healing, you guys, but actual transformation. Every time we struggle, we have the opportunity to let some part of us go and return with the treasure. It's some opportunity for growth to get to know ourselves better. This is exciting. This is what life is all about. Knowing ourselves better, being in better connection with ourselves and with the people that we love. So the practice is this. First, we name the primary emotion. Second, we name the secondary emotion. What emotion are we layering on? Where is the judgment coming in? And the third step is we drop that second layer with validation and with compassion. Of course, I feel this way. Or I like to kind of be my own protector, like the secondary emotion is the playground bully, to which I say, of course I feel this way, but we're not going to do that today, Shane. I feel like we should call him Shane. Shane, sorry for all the Shanes out there, but like, let's name that playground bully in our brains. Like, we're not going to do that today, Shane. Jody Moore will be on here one day soon, one of my favorite coaches. And she always says, it's like taking a Sharpie from the toddler in our brains. Like, we're just not going to do that today. Okay. Feel how much lighter it feels already just to think about that. You've just lifted that layer of unnecessary suffering that serves us in no way. It just pretends to be useful. Now you have created the space to feel that primary emotion. Trust yourself enough to just feel that primary emotion and let the judgment go. There's vulnerability in that. Like, if I don't judge myself, someone else will. That's okay. Let's let that go. It's often actually easier to hide in the secondary emotion rather than the primary emotion. Guilt or judgment can feel more comfortable to us than sadness or fear or rejection or disappointment. And so it really does take courage to let go of the secondary emotion to face the first, which the amazing side benefit of this is that will directly impact your self-confidence. If you struggle with confidence, really leaning into this practice will just naturally increase your confidence, your ability to trust yourself, the story that you tell yourself about yourself, just this power of letting go. In Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, every descent is followed by a return, a transformation. But if we can't face the emotion that invited us downward, that core primary emotion, we can't reach the treasure that waits below. The secondary emotion blocks the treasure. It's unnecessary suffering that will keep us spinning and spiraling in judgment and will never get us there. It won't give us the growth. The primary emotion is the one that will offer the biggest unlock for us, the one that will really teach us about ourselves, our desires, our insecurities, our broken parts that need our love and care and actually offers growth. The reason I wanted to write this episode is for a friend who I have been coaching for a while now who struggles with this. It took me a minute just to see how consistent the pattern for her was, because our brains are really good at making everything sound like a different problem when really they're all interconnected, or maybe even the same problem. Instead, it popped up for her like, I feel like I'm failing at this. And then a new problem of like, this phase of life should look different than it is. And then a new problem of, I feel dumb that I didn't realize this. The problems all sound unique, which made it even worse because she really then believed that her life was a total mess in every area. But in reality, the common thread was one thing. She was layering on the thought. She was layering on judgment and resistance of that primary emotion. She stayed in that secondary emotion of judgment of herself instead of looking at the primary emotion. I feel bad that I feel bad in every area of my life. She assumed that no one else is thinking that something is wrong with them, which is of course not true. Something is wrong with all of us and nothing at all, right? At the same time, it's tough to be a human. But then she would use that thought to judge herself. That's a really painful, judgmental, and unnecessary thought that is causing her so much suffering. So my work with her has been to just drop that layer of judgment with compassion. When she does, you can visibly see the tension leave her face and her shoulders, just her whole body. There's just so much relief of like, oh, wait, I'm just now left with one emotion. And what she is left with is usually one emotion. For her, most consistently, it's disappointment, which is painful in its own way, but so much easier to allow for. And it allows for a lot of growth and really learning how to not resist that emotion of disappointment, but to go right for it and to let go of the judgment. Like, nothing is wrong with me. I just feel disappointment. And now let's get really good at doing disappointment. It's been amazing to see the progress that has come as she has just faced that one emotion. The path out of the well isn't fighting emotion, but befriending it, letting go of that unnecessary layering, the unnecessary judgment, the unnecessary suffering, but befriending those primary core emotions that we often want to hide from, but when befriended, can really contribute to our growth. So I want you to look for this pattern throughout the next week. The next time you feel bad about feeling bad or feel that judgment, remember there's only one descent required when you fall down the well. So if there's a layered emotion of judgment, shame, guilt that you can let go of with compassion, let's do that. You don't have to keep falling through all of these layers of guilt or shame. I am all about making all of the necessary sacrifices for our growth and betterment, but I really hope that we're not adding any of the unnecessary suffering that is not going to lead to our growth, that just keeps us in a spin cycle. I hope that this episode was helpful for you. I would love to hear your experiences as you really utilize and use this practice in your daily life. Please share it with a friend. And also, I'd be really interested to hear. I've been considering taking on a few private coaching clients. And let me know if you're interested in that. Part of it is because I want to just get in your brains and see where you are struggling in your motherhood. And I want to make sure that that is where this content is focused and centered and rooted. So more on that soon. Okay, thanks for being here. Until next time. Bye.
It was good.